Hi, guys. Welcome to the Simple Doesn't Mean Easy podcast. We are here twice a week, every Monday and Friday, working at simplifying things in our lives, one day at a time, one step at a time. I'm your host, Michelle Visser, and today is a little different than our usual episode. Today, we're going to chat a little bit about my thoughts on turning 55. By the way, before I start, I want to tell you I just found out something today that I was pretty excited about. Now, if you're not a podcast host, this might not excite you, but maybe if you're a podcast fan, you'll like to know this. Spotify just released commenting. So it used to be you could only use Apple Podcasts to go and leave your review. And for all of you that have done so, I am so grateful for leaving your thoughts about this podcast. And I wanted to make sure those of you who are on Spotify knew you now have the capability too. So, in either of those places, if you would be willing to go leave a comment and just give me your thoughts on the podcast, this episode, or the podcast in general, it means a lot to me. And it means a whole lot to the distribution and the reach of this podcast. So, I greatly appreciate it. If you're not sure how to do this, but you would like to, just go to soulyrested.com/podcast and that will walk you through the steps. It's super easy and will just take a minute and I'll be really grateful. So I've been working at this thing called life for somewhere close to 2,100 days now. And I can tell you, I am definitely learning new things continually. So I am not an expert at anything, and I am not here to quote you or spew out some expertise because the more I learn, the more I realize I have to learn, honestly. um, I also feel like I have spent 55 years on this continual German. What is German a word? Where did that come from? I was going to say gerbil and then hermit, I think. I don't know. Hermit crab, I guess. I don't know where my brain just went there. But I have spent 55 years on this gerbil wheel of continual failure. I feel like some days it just really feels like that. But you know what? That's kind of what it's like being human, right? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But um, I definitely am also continually looking older and older and getting more wrinkles and becoming unrecognizable when I look in the mirror. That is for sure. Oh, and gray. I'm definitely getting a lot more gray. Sometimes, do you guys who are like in your upper 40s and 50s and older, do you guys sometimes literally look in the mirror and you're kind of shocked for a second? Like, wait, who is that? Like, that is not who I think of myself as because I don't know. I think in my mind, I think I'm probably about 32 in my mind. I don't know. And then I look and that is not the reflection of a 32-year-old. So, anyway, but I definitely can tell you, I appreciate the simple joys so much more than I used to. I used to never even notice the simple joys. In fact, my 32-year-old self was just starting to notice those simple joys and appreciate them, maybe once in a blue moon. So, um, I think maybe that's something that I definitely can help people on and give them a little bit of insight, even though I fail at that too, for sure. For sure. Um, but I also appreciate the old fashioned things a whole lot more. I think I was always intrigued by them and I always found it interesting. I mean, I never, ever understood a person who said to me, "Oh, I hate history." I mean, even when I was a kid in middle school or high school, I would never have said anything to that person. Um, and I never walked around going, "I love history." But anytime I heard somebody say that, I remember just always being like, "Why? Why? What? Like, I mean, yeah, I don't want to memorize dates, and I don't like to read about battles and the details of, you know, what emperor took over after what other emperor. I don't like that. But like actual history, it's like really fascinating. Like I've always thought that. So I guess I've kind of always liked old fashioned things for the same reason because they hold a lot of history. but I appreciate them more now. I found them intriguing, but now I really appreciate them. Um, yeah, I could say a lot more there, but I think I'll move on to my next slide. So I I'm also a conundrum, and I'm learning that all people are conundrums. For instance, I'm an absolute lover of real food. That's like my standing point and my platform now is real food and how important it is and how good it is. But guys, I know I've shared, well, maybe not this exact detail, but I've shared this idea before on here. I grew up eating a whole lot of Hostess chocolate cupcakes. Do you know the ones I'm talking about? Are Hostess cupcakes? I don't even know. Are they still around? And were they always like available anywhere in the nation? I really don't know this, or if it was just an Eastern Seaboard thing. But the Hostess cupcakes are chocolate cupcake with chocolate icing. And then they have this white, it's not a swirl, it's like an interlocking link chain thing going across the top. And then they're filled with white. Mm, cream? What do I want to call that? It's not icing inside. And then they put the cupcakes together on the little piece of cardboard before they cover it in cellophane. And then they put the icing on it all at once. So it's this big swoop of icing that connects the two cupcakes. Just thinking about it and describing it still today, like, I don't know, makes me happy inside in a weird way. Even though if you handed me those, I'd say, no, thank you. I think. I don't know. Maybe I would have one if you handed them to me. I don't know. Depends on my mood, maybe. But in addition to those Hostess cupcakes, I mean, that wouldn't be dinner, of course. But I did grow up on hot dogs for dinner a whole lot. We had a lot of hot dogs. And never, ever was it seen as something subpar. Ever. Because they were name brand. and we always had hot dog buns. As I became a mom, the hot dog buns were the fancy thing because I was feeding my kids the way that I ate, but we didn't have the funds my parents did, and I had more kids than my parents did. So we often didn't have hot dog buns. We would use slices of bread for our hot dogs. So I felt like the only problem with our hot dog dinner back then was that, well, shucks, if I was a better parent, I'd have the enriched white doughy hot dog rolls instead of bread. um, but oh, and 7-Eleven Slurpees. As soon as I hung out with friends that could drive, 7-Eleven Slurpees and the candy at 7-Eleven became like, I don't know, the cornerstone of my weekends. I mean, ugh, thinking back, man, the crap that I ate, and I ate regularly. Wow. Okay, having said all that, um, you can see that I'm a conundrum. I'm quite an oxymoron when it comes to food because I'm always talking about real food. But, if you dive into the real Michelle, you'll find a lot of junk food in my past for sure. Um, I'm also a lover of the quiet country life. But Bill and I, when I was raising the kids, when we were a young family, we lived in the very heart of suburbia with like 5 grocery stores, like big chain grocery stores, and probably 10 different pharmacies within, not kidding, 3 to 4 mile radius, probably that many. Um, so it was a very built up metropolis kind of area versus, now I love the quiet life. I don't mind if I don't go to town for weeks. I really don't. And I don't mind paying a little bit more, like ever, to just go to the country store or just go to the very small town that's 8 miles away and pick up something because I don't really want to go to town. So, very different. Um, and it's been gradual. It's been pretty gradual, a lot of these things, because even though our move to where we are now was sudden, it took a long time for me to appreciate it. And as far as the food thing, that's been extremely gradual. Yet, I guess you could say that was kind of sudden too. I don't know. Guys, we're all like this though, right? You know what I'm talking about. We're all this this crazy hodgepodge of all kinds of stuff. So, how does 55 feel? I can honestly tell you it feels better than 45 in a lot of ways. When I think of the last decade and how much I've grown, I really think it is the decade of the most growth for me, the most learning, the most improvement, the most like inward self. Um, what's the word I want to use? Critiquing. And in a lot of ways, 55 is very good. Sure, there's also a lot of downsides. My body, it aches in places it never ached before, and it's not able to do the things that I think I should be able to do. Because remember, in my brain, I'm that 32-year-old, and I go to do something, I go, oh, that's not really something I can do anymore, you know? Um, so definitely, it's not perfect, but 55 is good. I'm not complaining at all. I have nothing to complain about. And I'm very thankful that I've gotten to spend this last decade of learning and growth in a lot of ways with you. Um, so I really appreciate that. I am learning as I age that we're all that multifaceted person, like I'm trying to describe that I am, um, in a boring kind of way, mind you. But as much as our human nature, like for the sheer act of organizing details in our mind, our human nature wants to be able to put people into boxes. I think that that's just something we naturally need to do sometimes. But we really can't be put into boxes. None of us can. On one hand, um, I'm still very insecure and incompetent, and when I look in the mirror and I see that I'm not 32, I feel very insecure sometimes. I'm not going to lie. But on the other hand, I'm actually much more sure of myself. And I know that God is good in very confusing, difficult, heartache situations. And I only know that because I've walked that road for 55 years, right? So um, I used to edit out, this is embarrassing, but I'm going to tell you anyway, and maybe a lot of you can relate. I used to edit out the deep furrows. There were some furrows in my face, like between my eyebrows, this one line that goes vertically, and these deep lines around my face that are very much my case camp background. My maiden name is Case Camp, and I very much, some of the lines on my face are just very much from my father's family. And I used to hate that because it looked so old before I was old. So I would edit those things out of photographs as soon as I had the capability and learned how to do that. I'm talking like 15 years ago. And looking back, ugh, I'm so upset with myself that I took the time to do that. And of course, I look at those pictures, a few of them, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what was wrong with me? It doesn't really even look like me. Ugh, it's it's just a fact of life. But for most part, I am now comfortable in my skin. Is really what I was getting at. I sometimes take on projects that are way too big, but I also shy away from things and think I am totally not capable of doing fill in the blank that. I feel really good about the life that I've built, but sometimes I fall back into comparing myself with others who, by worldly standards, have accomplished a lot more than I have. And I've learned, though, through all of it, no matter how well intentioned I am absolutely going to offend somebody. And in some ways, that's all my fault. I haven't figured out still, after 55 years, exactly what I do that is just kind of naturally offensive sometimes. But I think what it is that I kind of don't have a filter. And I don't mean in a negative way. I just mean I'm like as genuine can be with people. And sometimes I need to not be, if that makes sense. So I have a way of offending people sometimes when I don't mean to at all. But some are going to misunderstand me, and I know that. Some people are never going to like me, and I know that. So pleasing others can't be my why, or I'm going to continually fall deeper and deeper into failure. So after all that rambling, my first advice that I would give to someone who is in, I don't know, 20s, 30s, 40s, even just starting looking at 50, I would tell you that if you're trying to prioritize and simplify your life, or the meaning of your life a little bit, trying to make things a little less hectic, trying to decide what's really important in life, I think the very first advice I would give you, no matter what your age, is start everything right if you can. Start your day right. Start your week right. Start your year right. Now, it's going to get off track, and nothing will ever, ever, ever end the way you started it or the way you envisioned it. I can tell you that. But if you start it right, it's going to make all the difference. I have a quote for you from one of my favorite authors that I'm going to read. C.S. Lewis wrote in Mere Christianity, "The real problem comes where people do not usually look for it. It comes the very moment that you wake up each morning. All your wishes and hopes for the day rush at you like wild animals. And the first job each morning consists simply in shoving them all back and listening to that other voice, taking that other point of view, letting that other larger, stronger, quieter life come flowing in." And so on, all day, standing back from all your natural fussings and frettings, coming in out of the rain. We can only do it for moments at first, but from those moments, a new sort of life will spread through our systems. Isn't that beautiful? And I really, truly, wholeheartedly believe C.S. Lewis was on to a very big life truth. So that's my first advice. Whenever you can, start your day or your week or your year, start everything right. Some other advice, um, prioritize authenticity and individuality. Both in your own life, require those things of yourself, but also the people that you surround yourself with. Know also that your worth is intrinsic. It really is. I promise. You are worthy. Never judge potential, either yours or someone else's, based on the past. I'd also say you really need to value your opinions a little bit more if you tend to always do what others recommend, but value your opinions a little bit less if you tend to think you're always right. And I fall into both of those categories, by the way. Always work at enjoying learning. This is as a homeschool mom that I would advise that, because it really needs to be a lifelong endeavor. But my biggest lifelong lesson that I would say, after all those other little tidbits, my biggest life lesson is one that I have been working on for probably 2 decades now. So, by the way, if you're listening to this and you're in your 30s, know that you may have just discovered a major truth that you're going to be wrapping your head around for the next 20 years. But the truth for me has been that nothing is more important than a 4-8 attitude. I've talked about this before, but I'm going to explain. It's 4:8. And it's after Philippians 4:8, the Bible verse that says, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything be excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And any time that my natural proclivity towards negativity rears its head, I go through that checklist and I think, surely there is something true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, something about this thing that I'm being so negative about. And I will remind myself of those characteristics of this thing that has caused me angst. And I point out to myself, what is true and noble and right and pure and lovely and admirable? And it's a lifelong process, but slowly, very slowly, my brain is um, starting to sometimes switch itself over to that 4-8 attitude without me going through all the motions. And it's a very good thing. But in the end, as much as I do have a personality that really wants to please everyone, and as much as I'm not happy if I'm not working and striving towards some big goal, I have learned that none of it matters if I don't have a thankful, positive attitude, and if I don't appreciate the ordinary, simple joys. All those simple joys that I would miss because I am caught up with the wrong perspective. I have something else I'm going to read to you before we close this out. It is a little poem I found years ago. I don't know how I even found it, and I don't know who this person is who wrote it. It's called Do Not Ask Your Children to Strive, and it was written by William Martin. Do not ask your children to strive for extraordinary lives. Such striving may seem admirable, but it's the way of foolishness. Help them instead to find the wonder and the marvel of an ordinary life. Show them the joy of tasting tomatoes, apples, and pears. Show them how to cry when pets and people die. Show them the infinite pleasure in the touch of a hand, and make the ordinary come alive for them. The extraordinary will take care of itself. And one last thing, guys. I don't know if there was anything useful in this or not, all of Michelle's musings. I hope so. I really do. But I want to read just a few sentences from it's my sermon notes. I'm not even sure where I came across this book, but it's by Charles Spurgeon. And he wrote, "Life is a seed time. Of all men, it may be said, they have sown. Prudent men put the question, what will the harvest be? Don't rest." This is me now. That was Charles Spurgeon. Now this is me. Don't rest in the world's definition of a good harvest, guys. Because you know the simple moments and the simple memories that you hope to harvest. So plant your seeds accordingly. That's my biggest advice, I guess. You know what you want to harvest. Plant your seeds accordingly. Thanks for listening, guys. Remember, it is easy to forget how blessed we are to live this life. So enjoy the simple, everyday efforts. It's not easy, but it's a good life.